Hello again, it's Jonathan at the piano lesson. I thought I would pick up with our lesson last week from Clair de Lune because I had such a massive response. No, but I like it. And I thought of something, again, would be kind of fun, but for you Barry Harris fans, to take Barry Harris's exercise and to adapt it to this melody. So just as a review, what are the Barry Harris chords? Okay, well, they're passing chords. Okay, essentially you have two chords. You have a diatonic chord and a chromatic chord, and we'll give you our bird's eye cam right here. So in C, right, you have your sixth chord. That's our Barry Harris chord, C, E, G, A, right, in the key of C. Why are we in the key of C? Who the heck knows? But C6, first inversion, second inversion, third inversion, which appears as if it's A minor 7, and then we're back to the root position again. Okay? So C, E, G, A, E, G, A, C, G, A, C, E, and then A, C, E, G. There's our four iterations of the chord. And then in between those four notes, we have a remaining group of notes. Okay? And those are our notes for our diminished chord. D diminished, F diminished, A flat diminished, let's say B diminished, whatever you want to call it. But that's our passing chord, okay? You could even say first inversion, second inversion, third inversion. So it sounds, if you put the two together, right? If you take this and dovetail them together, put them together. Hello, hello. It sounds like this. Right? That's essentially what Barry Harris wants us to be able to do. And he has a really good point, because his big thing was kind of like yelling at, who's like to yell at everybody, right? Very angry all the time. I might be angry too if I was him, if I grew up when he grew up. Who knows? But by the way, just as an aside, why do I play the piano? Why do I teach piano? Why do I love the piano so much? Because I was really lucky. Okay, I was super lucky. I had a wonderful mother who loved music, and father, although I said my mother first just because she was the student of music. My father was an enormous fan of music, but never studied. And he had kind of a complex, like he had, back in the day, so my father was born in like 1923, if you could believe that. And back in the day, they had music education in school. Might even been in my mother's time too, possibly, but they would take the kids, they divide them into two groups, and they would name them. I think one were like the Blue Jays and the Blackbirds or something like that. But like the Blue Jays were the ones that could sing, and like the Blackbirds were the one that couldn't sing, and they were the listeners, and the other people were the singers. And I think my father was kind of traumatized because they had a word back then which they don't use anymore now, but they used to call it tone deaf. So tone deaf meant that you couldn't sing. You had no sense of pitch, which is a really mean thing to do to kids, because even it takes many years to develop a sense of pitch. You don't just roll out of bed and develop a sense of intonation and pitch, okay? Although I will say this, it is my understanding that because music education is so big in Asia, there is a higher incidence of perfect pitch in Asia than there is in other parts of the world. Now, so perfect pitch being the capacity to hear a note and know whether it's an A or a B or C. And I've hung out with people who have that. I don't have that ability. I have certainly relative pitch. So if you tell me what note something is, and then I can give me another note, I can tell you what that other note was relative to it. I can also tell you what intervals things are, but I don't have the perfect pitch really. I have it to a small extent, a very small extent. Some people also have kind of a synesthesia where they see colors as well as hear sounds, and so they associate certain pitches or certain sounds with colors, and that's a very real kind of thing, or senses of taste kind of blurred together. Um, anyway, uh, there, I think that's very unfair to make judgments about people, especially when they're kids, about in terms of music education. It takes a lot of years to get that together. And why did I bring that up? I brought that up because because I was talking about how lucky I was to be able to play music and teach music. My father, I think, had the traditional kind of like mythic violin teacher that kind of gave up on my father or something because said he had no talent or whatever. But my mother had a piano teacher and then went on to study music at Brandeis with many great teachers, one of which was Leonard Bernstein. But then I had two wonderful piano teachers. I had many teachers along the way, but they were all so nice. Everyone I met was all so nice, and it would just never occur to anyone to yell at anyone. It was just like why. And then, but as I got older, I realized that there were other people out there who, some of which were actually probably good teachers, but they just had they were kind of crazy, and they just had terrible tempers, and they'd yell at people and make up stuff, and I just thought that was completely ridiculous. So I don't know. When I think of Barry Harris, I think of someone who's just very angry, just constantly angry. And he has these stories of when he'd ride in someone's car and they'd be playing Bill Evans, and he'd be like, "Bill Evans, I don't want to hear that, Bill Evans," or you could name any kind of name. I think I brought this up once. I called it the Susquehanna Hat Syndrome. I think I brought that up because that was the old Bud Abbott and Lou Costello bit where he was assigned by Bud Abbott to deliver some straw hats for the Susquehanna Hat Company. He gave him this big tub of hats that he had to walk up the street with, and so he takes one out just for fun and puts it on, and he's walking down the street, and someone stops him and says, "Oh, what a lovely hat." And he says, "Oh, well, thank you very much." And he says, "Where did you get that hat?" And he says, "Well, this is a Susquehanna hat." And the other person says, "Susquehanna hats! The man who stole my wife was wearing a Susquehanna hat." And he beat him up and wrecked the hat. And this would keep happening over and over and over and over and over again. The other iteration of that gag, which I may have told you about, was the Niagara Falls bit, where he would be in a jail cell with someone and he'd mention the place Niagara Falls, and always we had a lovely time at Niagara Falls, and the guy in the jail cell would become irate and start to strangle him, and then he would collect himself and say, "Oh, I'm very sorry, I didn't mean to do that, you're such a nice man," and say, "I don't know what happened, I just mentioned Niagara Falls," and he would go berserk again. I had to get that off my chest. So anywho, Barry Harris had a very good point. As a piano player, we hear improvisation all too often as single line imitation, single line, right? Just right, like trumpets and saxophones, whatever. But we're a chordal instrument. We don't have to. We're not locked into that idea of just playing these single lines, right? But for some reason, it's a very interesting thing that happened. In my mind, pianism in some ways has gotten better over the years because you have better education and better schools, but it's also sort of devolved in terms of, at least in terms of jazz piano. The greatest jazz pianists were the stride piano players of the 20s and 30s, and even prior to that, right, the Scott Joplins and people who played Art Tatum and James P. Johnson, right, and Willie the Lion Smith. I'm sure I've mentioned these before. If you've never heard of these people, please seek them out. Even later on, George Shearing, very chordal person. And over time, they played the entire instrument. They were like a whole orchestra. And maybe partly because there were pianos all over. Everyone had a piano. They were called saloons at the time, right? A bar. We call them bars now. But every place where people gathered, they had pianos, and people would dance, and they were expected to be like a one-man band. And as time went on, and you had band amplification, pianists, for some odd reason, they just stopped playing the low part of the piano, and that's one of the things that actually Barry Harris mentions. He never stopped playing the low part of the piano. He never started playing bass notes. Or if you listen to Errol Garner, or if you listen to a lot of older guys, they still played the low part of the piano. That's understandable. A lot of piano players don't want to do that. They don't want to compete with the bass player. Fine, I get that. But you can work together. I mean, you can kind of work it out, And so he formulated these exercises. This is my long-winded explanation, but he formulated these exercises so that you could gain some facility in grabbing chords on the keyboard, right? So you're going back and forth between a consonant and a dissonant note, right? And that one, or consonant dissonant chord, that diminished chord has one note in it that is not part of the major scale. And you could rationalize that diminished chord in one way or another. The D diminished, if you add the G bass, it's kind of a metaphor for the dominant chord, because you have G and you have a B. I'll put that back. But you have a G and a B, which could be down here, and a D and an F. That's the basic G7. And then you have this A flat, right, which is the flat 9. And that flat 9 is an alteration. Alteration meaning that we've raised it or lowered it a half step, and it's considered a ninth, an A flat. Really, it's not a G sharp; it's an A flat in this instance. So G up to A is a ninth. That's an extension, and then it's altered. But you have that constant. Right. You constantly going back. Even but that's the scale. See, that sounds very consonant, doesn't it? If I played the notes of the diminished scale. That's the D diminished chord. That's the diminished scale over the D diminished chord. So you see the possibilities. You have this breathing going on, right? This tension and release. I'm trying to think of George Shearing was most famous for making block chords, I think, really long before Barry Harris, but there was someone before him. And his name's on the tip of my tongue, and I wish I could think of it, But anyway, so that's the exercise that you want to get good at. Putting those two together. Here I'm just arpeggiating the chord. Arpeggiating the chord. Now, you can take that exercise and you can adapt it to other types of chords. All right, you don't have to. You just play a 6 chord. Why a 6 chord and not a 7 chord? Well, a couple reasons. Or why not just a plain triad? Well, if you just do a plain triad, it's just too tame, right? It doesn't have enough color to it. So you add the 6. Typically, we think of jazz chords as being major 7 chords, but why not the major 7 chord? Well, because you're getting a little ahead of yourself in that the B belongs to the diminished chord, okay? By the way, there's another aspect of this exercise which no one really talks about, and I think it's really critical to pianism, and that is voicing the chord as opposed to a chord voicing. What's the difference? A chord voicing is how the notes are laid out on the keyboard. Okay, so this is a root position chord. If I take the C and I move it down here, let's say, and I take the E and I play it here, I mean, that's a kind of a voicing, right? But voicing a chord, right, is how you play the notes dynamically. So what one really should get good at doing is bringing out the upper note, bringing out the melody note, right, and playing the other notes softer. So what you could do as an exercise, all right, loud, soft, loud, soft, loud, soft, loud, soft, loud, soft, loud, soft. Right? And that way you hear the melody clearly. Now, and it's also easier if you stagger the melody and the chord, okay? Right? But you want to be able to play all the notes at the same time. Can you hear that? So that right? How do I do that? Well, you put more weight on the upper part of the hand. And I also kind of start with the key down a little bit, and I slide on the surface of the key. If you move obliquely on the key, you'll lower the key, almost like sanding a piece of wood, or like a plane, like a wood plane. But it's like a plane landing, and you can get the key to descend in a controlled manner, much easier than trying to control the key vertically like that. It's very, very difficult to control the key perfectly vertically. So you could also pull like a drawer too as well. That's actually even softer if you want to get the sound softer, but louder. Pushing is better for louder, pulling is better for softer, I think. And you can alternate as well. You could do push-pull, but bringing out these lower notes. Now, I don't have to bring out the upper note. I could bring out the lower note, right? Or I could bring out the note above that. Or I could bring out the note above that, right? What did I do? There we go. Sounds like a totally different chord, doesn't it? Just because of how you voice the chord. That's really critical when you're trying to bring out melodic lines, because when we're playing the piano, we're managing more than one melody. We're managing 2, 3, 4, 5 different melodies very often. So, and there's another, this never gets easy, does it? There's another layer of complexity to that. Whether or not you should connect the notes or separate the notes. Typically, we connect melodic lines as a general rule, okay? So you want to be able to connect right? That scale, by the way, that's our harmonic minor scale. It almost goes in parallel, major. That scale, that raised 6, that flat 6 or raised 5, as Barry Harris talks about. Let's call it a flat 6. That is a mode of the harmonic minor scale. It's a mode of a sort. Why of a sort? Because one of those notes doesn't belong to the harmonic minor scale, it belongs to the natural minor, the G natural. That's the harmonic minor. Right? That's the third of the 5 chord. Right? So what you're hearing is that? Oh, was that? Yeah. That's it. Okay, I had to look. But that's what you're hearing. Now, if you're going to connect those notes, right? If you just use the top finger, that's going to be a bit difficult. You could use the pedal, hold down the pedal, right? Lift your hand, pedal, 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 pedal. That's possible, but it's actually nicer and better to use your fingers, because that way you have more control. So maybe, let's just say, I say maybe because you have to experiment with fingering, but maybe going 4 instead of 5, right? 5, 4, what are we doing? 5, and then 4. So I did 4, 5, 4, 5, 4, like that. I'll show you again from up here. 4, 5, 4, 5, 4. I'm not so sure that's the best fingering necessarily. You know, you could go 5, 4, 5, 4, 5. Pianists do that. 5, 4, 5, 4. I'm not so sure I'm comfortable with that. 5. You could also go 3, 4, 5, but you'd probably break your hand. 4, 5. Yeah, I don't think the 3 would work too well in that instance. And typically it's not possible to connect all of the notes. So that's where the pedal comes in. The pedal can help to, you know, connect those chord notes, but the fingers, really, the honest fingers, here's a combination of fingers and pedal, right? Pedal down, voicing. And sometimes I can rearrange my fingers in the heat of battle when the pedal is down. So now in the real world, where would you apply that? Well, in this you could apply it there. When would you apply it? Well, if you're playing one of the chord notes, C, E, G, A, right, you'd use your 6th chord. If you're playing another note other than that, well, use your diminished chord, all right? So you can play major 6, there's the 6th chord, and then here's your diminished. Now, do I want to play another chord? Diminished 6, diminished 6, diminished 6, 6, diminished 6, diminished. Now I have to go up a 4th. Then going down. Diminished, and then the 6th chord, the minor, and then even though in the music it's D minor, it's just D minor 7. You could make it. You could just for the exercise. You could play the diminished chord. Here's the A flat. Resolve it, and then play the major. So you get kind of. I do. I have to go up a 4th. And then you got this. The minor. That's the relative minor. Up a 4th. And then just make that, and then you could transpose it up. Back to C. You go back and forth between those 2 chords. change the chord to a dominant. Transpose to F. And then go to the relative minor, D minor. Back to the C. Be kind of a fun thing to do on a gig. You know, take a piece of classical music and just stretch it. You know, a lot of jazz guys did that all the time. You know, there were some very interesting adaptations of classical pieces, just kind of taking a little bit of it, right, and making it into to something else. But again, you know, the trick to doing these exercises is applying them, right? It's not just doing the exercise. The exercises can be kind of drudgery, so you really got to make them into music. That's really the magic of making music, right? That's what separates great composers from everyone else, right? There's a handful of them, and then we just kind of do our best, right? But I think that I'm encouraging you guys to kind of stretch out a bit, experiment, be a little adventurous, and, you know, apply some of this theory and these exercises that seem kind of unapproachable. They're not, okay? It's easier than it looks, but, you know, enjoy it. Anyway, I'm going to get going pretty soon here, so good to see you guys. I say it metaphorically, right? Because I'm not actually seeing you. If I was seeing you, I'd have to see a doctor. But enjoy your weeks. Send me a card. Don't send me a card. Send me a salami. I would say send me salami. I wouldn't eat it, though, because I don't eat salami. I used to eat salami and eggs as a kid. That's my father used to make me, but I don't think I'd eat that anymore. I'm Jonathan Eder. This is the piano lesson. Have a great week, and we'll see you next time. Okay. Bye-bye.